A youngling survived the night Anakin Skywalker brought the Jedi Temple down. She did not move, did not breathe, and somehow she lived. Years later, the galaxy would learn her name. That night began over a decade of hunting them. In the first place the Order would land was the place no Jedi expected to lose. A year before Order 66, a clone trooper named Tub had given the Republic its only warning. In the Clone Wars Season 6 chip arc, Tub collapsed during the Battle of Ringo Vinda and shot down General Tiplar without knowing why. He had no memory of doing it, but he could not stop apologizing afterward. A 501st ARC trooper named Fives investigated with the help of a clone medical droid, AZ-3, and traced the malfunction to a small biological implant embedded in every clone past the third stage of embryonic development. The chips were a Sith design. Sidious and Count Dooku had built them into the Republic's army for one specific purpose: seal behind falsified medical records and the kill Jedi Master Sifo Dyas' original commission or the army itself. Fives understood almost all of it. He managed to secure an audience with the Supreme Chancellor directly, but Palpatine manipulated the encounter to frame him as an assassin. Commander Fox brought him down in the hangar shortly after, in an episode titled Orders. Then, he made the call he had been waiting 13 years to make. In a quiet office on Coruscant, the Supreme Chancellor lifted a comlink and gave the order. On Utapau, Commander Cody had just handed Obi-Wan Kenobi his fallen lightsaber. Minutes later, his ATTE turned its main cannon on the Jedi Master and fired. On Felucia, Commander Bly was walking patrol behind Aayla Secura when a squad opened fire on her back. On Salukami, Commander Neo's bark speeder banked towards Staz Ali and brought her down at low altitude. Ki-Adi-Mundi fell on Megiddo, surrounded and cut down by his own men in seconds. Above Cato Nemoidia, Plo Koon's starfighter was shot from the sky by his own wing. On Kashyyyk, Commander Greed drew his weapon on Yoda from behind and never finished the motion. The small green Jedi sensed it through the Force, turned, and ended Greed before the trigger could be pulled. But one of those clones, a captain named Rex, fought it long enough to give Ahsoka a clue. Captain Rex of the 501st Legion had been Anakin Skywalker's closest soldier through 3 years of war. By the time Order 66 fired, he was aboard a Venator-class Star Destroyer called the Tribunal, returning from the Siege of Mandalore with Ahsoka Tano and the captured Maul. The Order fired his ship mid-corridor. He raised his blaster on Ahsoka and struggled against it for as long as he could, managing to tell her to find what was causing it before losing control. During the Siege of Mandalore arc in Clone Wars, Ahsoka worked with the ship's medical bay to locate and extract Rex's inhibitor chip while the rest of the 332nd Company hunted them through the corridors. They escaped the Tribunal as it came down on a Mandalorian moon, getting clear in the wreckage and the chaos of that crash. Most of the 332nd had been her men, and they had repainted their helmets to honor her. By the next morning, those helmets sat in a row of small graves. Ahsoka buried them herself. She left her lightsabers in the snow beside the helmets. Far away on Alderaan, a senator was already looking for someone exactly like her, but the night had not yet reached its center, and its center was the temple itself. The brightest lights in Coruscant had become a funeral pyre before dawn. The 501st Legion marched up the temple steps under Anakin Skywalker, now Darth Vader, with orders from the Chancellor to leave no Jedi standing. The operation had a code name. It was called Operation Nightfall. The Temple Battlemaster, Sindralig, met Vader near the High Council chamber and did not survive the encounter. And then the youngling opened her eyes. She had been in the temple, playing dead. She stayed silent until the burning stopped. The fires burned through the night. Not everyone who died inside had a name the galaxy would remember. Master Minas Velti fell defending a chamber of younglings. Master Shaak Ti fell somewhere in those halls. Her death was one of the most contested of the Purge, with Star Wars Galactic Atlas placing it during the assault as the most widely accepted account. Near the temple steps, the Padawan Zed Jukasa raised his blade against a clone squad and was brought down within seconds. Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan witnessed it from his speeder and turned back into traffic without slowing. By morning, the Jedi Beacon was calling every surviving Jedi to come home. The temple's signal tower had been recalibrated. Any Jedi anywhere in the galaxy who received the beacon would read it as a recall order from the Council. Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi reached the temple in time to reverse the signal, replacing the recall with a warning that the Order had fallen and that no Jedi should approach. That warning kept broadcasting long after the smoke cleared. While the temple burned and the beacon's warning began its long broadcast on the forest world of Kaller, the Jedi Master Depa Billaba turned to face her own clone troopers and ordered her Padawan Caleb Dume to run. Caleb escaped into the wilderness with the help of Clone Force 99. The boy who ran that day called himself Kanan Jarrus and never used the old name again. A lightsaber changed hands aboard a Venator-class Star Destroyer above another world. The Lasat Jedi Master Jaro Tapal pressed it into his Padawan's grip as his own clones cut through the corridor behind them. Cal Kestis carried that hail for the next 5 years before he ignited it again. A Jedi Master named Kelleran Beck carried a green-skinned child into a Naboo Royal starship and lifted it into Coruscant traffic. The child was small, an infant of his species, but already decades old by human measure. His name was Grogu, and for decades, no one else would say it. Off the Outer Rim, on the asteroid medical base of Polis Massa, a different escape was reaching its end. Padme Amidala died in childbirth, attended by medical droids and Senator Organa. The twins she had born in her final hour were split that night to protect them from their father and his master. Luke went to Owen and Beru Lars on Tatooine. Leia was adopted by Bail Organa and Brea Organa on Alderaan, raised publicly as their daughter. On a quiet moon called Aldalim, a Jedi Master named Karak Infilla was meditating when the new Sith Lord came for his crystal. Infilla had taken a Barash vow years before the war, withdrawing from all Jedi activities in a form of atonement, and had spent the Clone Wars in seclusion. He had a green kyber crystal, the heart of a lightsaber, and by the end of the day, that crystal would no longer be green. According to the Marvel comic Darth Vader, this was Vader's first solo mission. He arrived without a lightsaber. Sidious had ordered him to defeat the Jedi Master and take the crystal by force. He picked up his blade anyway. The duel ended on the edge of a dam, with Vader hurling the older Jedi over the rim and walking back into the wreckage with the crystal in his hand. What followed was older than the Empire. The dark side practitioners called it bleeding a crystal. The Dark Lord poured his wrath and grief into the kyber until it stopped reflecting light and began to swallow it. In Legends, the same months unfolded differently. The novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader opened on the planet Marcana hours before Order 66. 3 Jedi survived the purge there: Jedi Master Roan Shrine, the Zabrak Jedi Bol Chatak, and Padawan Ollie Starstone. After slipping into the underworld, they became targets of Vader's hunt, which drove them across multiple worlds. When he finally caught Shrine, he admitted what no one in the galaxy yet knew, that the new Dark Lord of the Sith had once been a man named Anakin Skywalker. Just weeks later, still in Legends, on a moon orbit in Kessel, 8 surviving Jedi tried to lay a trap. In Star Wars Purge, a Jedi named Shadei Potkin spread rumors that Obi-Wan Kenobi would attend a secret conclave. Vader arrived expecting Kenobi and found 8 Jedi waiting instead, and for one brief afternoon, they pushed the new Sith Lord closer to death than most had managed. Sui Choi severed Vader's right hand and opened his faceplate. Vader had already defied his master earlier that same week. That defiance was not at Kessel. In the same conclave, Boltar Swan had Vader at her mercy and refused to strike an unarmed man. Kofi Arana, watching her hold back, grabbed her lightsaber and ran her through with it. Vader used the Force to drive Podkin's Cortos' blade into Arana, and clone troopers cut down the rest. Palpatine then propagandized the incident across the HoloNet, inflating the body count to claim Vader had ended a far larger group of Jedi at Kessel single-handedly. The actual number was 8. Back in canon, the Dying Light arc of the 2017 Darth Vader series opened on the ruins of the Jedi Temple. Jocasta Nu, the chief librarian of the Order, had survived Operation Nightfall. She had hidden with her assistant Gar in the lower levels of Coruscant and compiled a single object. The list lived inside a kyber memory crystal. It held names, species, home worlds, and midichlorian readings, all cataloged before the Purge. Vader knew exactly what Sidious wanted to do with it. During the Clone Wars, Sidious had sent the bounty hunter Cad Bane to abduct Force-sensitive infants from their cribs for a program that would continue under the Empire. Sidious ordered Vader to take Jocasta alive. According to the same arc, the librarian returned to the temple to retrieve the crystal and was confronted first by the Grand Inquisitor. She drove him back in their first duel by hurling books from the archive shelves with the Force. Vader caught up to her in the High Council chamber. She told the stormtroopers around them who he had been before the helmet. The apprentice stood over the body of the librarian and the Kyber memory crystal she had hidden. As she died, she heard him say he would not let his master make more like her. Then, he destroyed it. While Vader destroyed one of Sidious's pipelines, the Grand Inquisitor was already running the other, filling it with the survivors of Vader's own purge. Long before he wore black armor, the Grand Inquisitor of the Galactic Empire had stood in a Jedi courtroom and listened to a Padawan named Barriss Offee explain why the Jedi Order deserved to fall. According to Ultimate Star Wars New Edition, he had been a Jedi Temple guard, one of the masked sentinels who patrol the halls of the Order on Coruscant. Barriss had carried out an attack on the temple itself and tried to frame Ahsoka Tano for it. It was Barriss's reasoning at trial that broke something inside him. She had argued that the Order was already corrupt, that the war had made hypocrites of every Jedi who fought in it, and that the violence she had committed was a symptom of the rot, not its cause. When Order 66 came months later, the former Temple Guard became the Grand Inquisitor, leader of Vader's Jedi Hunters. Sidious had built him a base. The Inquisitorius operated from a moon called Nur in the Mustafar system. Its headquarters, a black sea tower called the Fortress Inquisitorius, rising from the moon's ocean. Inside were holding chambers for captured Jedi and training rooms for the hunters Sidious was building from them. Many Inquisitors were former Jedi or Force sensitives broken, corrupted, or recruited by the Empire. The clearest case of that machine in action was former Jedi Knight Cere Junda and her Padawan Trilla Sidori. Per Fallen Order, Cere had escaped Order 66 with Trilla, but the Empire caught Trilla and tortured her until she broke, twisting her into the second sister. When Cere reached the Fortress Inquisitorius to rescue her, she found Trilla already in Inquisitor armor and carrying a red blade. The trauma cut Cere off from the Force for years. The Inquisitorius grew. The fifth brother and the seventh sister, the eighth brother and the ninth sister, a Kefar woman named Escata Karis, and eventually Barriss Offee herself, who returned in Tales of the Empire wearing red. The hunts ran in parallel across the early Empire. A Dawutan Inquisitor known as the Sixth Brother tracked Ahsoka Tano to a farming moon called Rada, per the canon novel Ahsoka. Tales of the Jedi later reworked the same idea in animated form in Resolve, presenting a similar confrontation with an unnamed Inquisitor. Ahsoka ended the encounter and took both lightsaber crystals, purifying them through the Force into the white blades she would carry into the rebellion. The Grand Inquisitor did not live to see the rebellion he was hunting form into a fleet. The Padawan confronted a Jedi named Kanan Jarrus over Mustafar. The boy from Collar had come back as a man. The Grand Inquisitor fell from the duel into the reactor fires of his own Star Destroyer. Charles Soule's Star Wars run later revealed that Vader bound the Grand Inquisitor's spirit to a ruined Jedi outpost called Tempest. But the hunter who finally reached Obi-Wan Kenobi was neither Vader nor the Grand Inquisitor. She was the third sister, Reva Savander, a young human woman who, in the years since the temple fell, had climbed through the Inquisitorius with one target in mind: the man behind the helmet who had taken her friends from her. In the Galactic Senate chamber on Coruscant, Bail Organa watched the seated representatives of 1,000 worlds rise to their feet and applaud. The Supreme Chancellor had just announced the dissolution of the Republic and the formation of the Galactic Empire. The applause lasted for minutes. Across the chamber, Senator Padme Amidala observed that liberty was ending to thunderous applause. Bail did not clap. The Empire did not start as a military regime. The Petition of 2000, which Padme had organized, with Bail among its most prominent signatories, failed to stop Palpatine's consolidation of power. Real authority concentrated increasingly around Palpatine's inner circle, including Grand Vizier Mas Amedda, while the Senate's practical influence steadily eroded. Every campaign against dissent built the next generation of dissidents. In the novel Tarkin, Will of Tarkin's doctrine of rule by demonstration of overwhelming force was field-tested on the Antar system, where his campaign became the Antar Atrocity. The operation created enough controversy that Tarkin had to be quietly reassigned, but the doctrine survived him. Galen Erso believed he was working on civilian energy. In the canon novel Catalyst, a Rogue One story, a Republic scientist named Galen Erso was a friend of a young Imperial officer named Orson Krennic. Urso researched kyber crystals. He believed his work would solve civilian energy shortages. Krennic had spent years quietly steering Urso's funding, his publishing access, and his career into the path of a single Imperial project. By the time Urso understood, he and his daughter Jyn were already living inside it. The project Krennic was building had a name and a location. The Death Star began as a Geonosian design, with early construction tied to Geonosis and its separatist industrial base. The super laser relied on kyber crystals, including kyber the Empire stripped from sacred sites such as Jedha. The weapon that would one day eliminate Alderaan was, in its first decade, an energy research program. Vader was building his own fortress. On a different world entirely, Sidious was building something the galaxy would not understand for another 30 years. According to the Darth Vader Marvel Run's later arcs, Vader claimed the volcanic world of Mustafar as his personal fortress. The architecture was designed for him by the spirit of a Sith Lord named Momin, whose influence shaped the final form. The fortress concentrated dark side energy through the geology of the planet itself. The Emperor's secret cloning research was taking shape at the same time. The program eventually centered on Mount Tantus on Wayland, where Director Hemlock's scientists pursued M-count replication and the use of Force-sensitive children for Palpatine's hidden plans. The project was known as Project Necromancer. The ISB handled internal security and political threats across the Empire, while Compnor drove ideological, cultural, and educational reprogramming on imperialized worlds. In the years the Empire spent building, Bail Organa was building too. One of his most important recruits was the woman who had walked away from the Order on a Mandalorian moon. Ahsoka Tano took the codename Fulcrum and began moving from system to system, gathering information, smuggling families off imperialized worlds, and quietly connecting the survivors Bail's network had not yet found. Later, Fulcrum's agents would carry the same call sign in Star Wars Rebels, but the work began with her. Quinlan Vos was alive somewhere in it. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series places him connected to the Hidden Path, a network moving Jedi and Force-sensitive targets to safety across the early Empire. On Gorse, a former Jedi named Kanan Jarrus met a Twi'lek pilot named Harrison Dullah. Their cell would eventually become the crew of the Ghost, the same one that recruited a young thief named Ezra Bridger off the streets of Lothal in Star Wars Rebels. Ezra's parents had spoken out against Imperial rule on Lothal before they were arrested. By the time the rebellion called itself by that name, the network had already been running for years, built one decision at a time, by people the Empire could not see because they did not look like a system. Two stories sit at the edges of everything this video covered. The first is the man who designed this outcome long before Palpatine gave the order, Darth Plagueis, and how the grand plan was supposed to work. The second is the full history of the Inquisitorius, from the first hunt to the last Inquisitor still standing when the rebellion finally won.